I got one of the most exciting, non-exciting news from Facebook. I'll explain why I say exciting, non-exciting. Well, it's not exciting because, usually when you get like a Facebook notification, at least to me, it's usually some BS that you wrote and you're like, you almost want to tuck your head away and run for the heels, right? And make sure we're recording. Yes, we are. All right. So usually when I get these notifications from Facebook, I'm usually like, oh boy. It's like misspelled words. It's like the you instead of spelling out the whole word. It's usually some nonsense. But this time, it was a 10-year. So it was back in 2013, a 10-year memory to the day, October 1st, 2013. But this time I decided to actually read it. I was like, oh, what did I write on here? And man, I was mind blown. I was definitely in awe as to what I wrote and the factual, let's just say it that way, the factual nature of executing on a plan. So I'll just so let's put it this way. In 2013, I was 23 years old, and at that point, you're in your early 20s. I'll say this, as a young guy, I was always fixated on being better. I don't know where I got the idea from, but I was always fixated on just making myself better in every facet. Now, I'll be honest and say this. I figured out pretty young as a guy that if you made yourself the best version of yourself, you were going to be a choice that the women wanted, right? And I think most guys don't think about it like that, but I don't know why I did. And I just figured, you know what? Just become the best version of yourself. It's a win-win situation. Becoming the best version of yourself, you're going to be in a very positive financial space. You're going to be in the select group of men. So it didn't make sense to me why I wouldn't want to be the best version of myself. Now, I know that might sound redundant to others, but I don't think everyone thinks like that. I didn't think that at this point. I thought everyone did think like this, to be honest. But when Facebook showed me that message, it made me remember. It literally, I woke up. Of course, you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't wake up and go and look at your phone. But today I did. And that was the first thing I saw was, oh, shoot, October 1st, 2013. And I put on there creating a plan or something like to that. I'll put the screenshot up. And it made me remember that day, and it made me remember at least that time space that I was in and what my plan was. And I gotta say, 10 years back, looking now, being now and looking 10 years ago, I would say I would definitely be 100% proud of myself. Now, I'll go back in a little bit and I'll kind of discuss my approach and how I got there and some of the things that I did to be able to truly say that I have accomplished the goals that I set and even surpassed them, right? Not only did I accomplish them, but I definitely surpassed my level of thinking at that time, which is pretty surprising because I'm very tough on myself. I'm a tough critic of myself. Before we go further, I always say this. I do truly believe that I don't think someone else can be harder than on me than I can be on myself. I don't believe that. I have heard people say things that they thought was mean. And I will tell them flat out, trust me, I am my toughest critic. And I can look you in the eye and say that. And I think that was one of the things that helped me accomplish this goal is I am brutally honest with myself. There's probably and then there was a second post that I happened to stumble upon that was 10 years ago, and I literally saw that I have weighed the same amount in 10 years. I have not lost a pound. I was 210 pounds 10 years ago with the total body fat, whatever, fat percentage. of like 12%. Now I'm down to 10. So I've not only gotten better, I'm not, I swear, I am not one of those guys who likes to gas up a situation. But I was dumbfounded by this because I happened to stumble upon these things as I scrolled through the pictures. I was like, oh wow, this is crazy. Not only have I've actually gotten better than what I thought I would be. So that was also interesting. That was on a side note. But the main comment was the creating a plan. And in this video, we're gonna touch on the plan, what it was, and how I accomplished it, and the goals or the markers that needed to be set to be able to accomplish it. And I think the mindset that it took to accomplish it. I should have almost written it down because I might probably forget the order in which I just stated that. But this video is totally off the top, nothing scripted, nothing written down. So if my thoughts are a little scattered, don't worry, on the next video, I'll make sure to have them organized for you anal retentive people, okay? So don't judge me. I'm only human. So let's get into it. So what was my goal? Let me make sure we're still recording. We're still recording. So what was my goal? So 10 years ago, I'll give you the space I was in. I was 23 years old, just getting out of college, undergrad. Now, I was blessed because, like I said earlier, I was always fixated on being better. So when I graduated, I said, okay, is this where I want to be in the next 5? I set goals, short-term goals and long-term goals. I'm really good at that. I don't do New Year's resolutions, so to speak. I might tell people I do, but the honest truth is that resolution was probably set like 6 months ago. Like I set that as a goal for in July, for January. But just because January hadn't come yet, I set a goal I just say, yeah, my New Year's resolution is to exercise more or read a book more. And so yeah. So I don't usually set New Year's resolution, but I do set short-term goals. And that was one of the things that I think is very important. You have to set short-term goals. You have to set 6-month goal, a week goal, a month goal. Now, over time, you'll start to notice that if you set these goals and you accomplish them, you cross them off the list. I am notorious still. I'm looking around because I know somewhere on this table there's got to be one. There is usually my short-term to-do list. I am notorious, and I just found one, right? And this is another to-do list, and I will cross them out. I am, as much as I don't consider myself organized, because once again, I could be better at being organized, right? And when you get to the point that you criticize yourself, but yet you got to give yourself credit, right? And this is what I'm doing today. This is a video of me giving myself credit. So I'm going to do that, right? When you are a person who criticizes yourself, what you find is that you don't think you're organized. So to me, I'm not as organized as I can be. So I don't give myself credit for being organized. But yet I get things done in an orderly fashion. Why? Because I have to be organized, but I could be better. That's how I always look at things. I don't make excuses for stuff like that. So, moving on. I digress. So, that was one of the things that I did was I set short-term goals and I was able to keep up with them. So I wasn't really looking 10 years advance. I just said, hey, okay, I want to make sure I get into anesthesia school. That I want to make sure that when I do get in, I make sure to be a pretty proficient provider so then I can kind of go out and do my own thing. I did that. So I always kept the goal in mind, right? Of course, I'm going to get some calls. I always kept the goal in mind from that perspective. Another thing that I did was I made sure to, whenever I did set these goals, I would tell individuals about it. Like I had an accountability partner. And at this time, I did not understand the merit to what I was doing. I just thought I would share with people that I trusted, that I thought would hold me accountable, or at least would inquire, that were going to be inquisitive enough to say, hey, so how's this going? And one of those individuals was my brother. Another one of those individuals was my mom and my dad. So I would always tell them. And, one of the best things to have an African or Nigerian parents in particular, I'm biased, right? I'm Nigerian. What it is, oh, you tell them you have a goal, They're going to double down. They're going to make sure you accomplish that goal. That's one of the most intriguing things with Nigerian parents is they'll remember. They'll say, like, I remember my dad when you know, if when I brought up stuff like this, he'd be like, so Ebuka, are you going to make sure to do this? Are you going to make? So that's that mentality of him always, you know, with his accent. You know, I miss him dearly with his accent telling me, hey Ebuka, make sure you haven't done this. I thought you said you were going to do this. They held you accountable, and I love that. See, one of the things that I think people miss on when you're thinking to be that you want to be successful in something, you have to be willing to take the criticism. You have to be willing to understand that some people aren't that you have to be willing to understand that if you don't acknowledge what you suck at or that you lack in some specific area, you have to have someone who's willing to talk to you. Now, and you know, maybe I do well with criticism better than others because once again, if you become your own toughest critic, there's nothing anyone else can tell you that's really going to hurt you. So when my dad or my mom or my brother would tell me these things, I already knew them, right? And I'd say, okay, all right, well, this time I'm going to set a different goal that kind of helps me. So instead, let's just say the goal was to study for the GRE or whatever, right? I would then say, okay, well, all right, yes, Dad, I said I would do it, but now my new goal would be for this week would be, okay, I'm going to study 2 hours on Wednesdays and Thursdays on my days off or whatever for the GRE. So, and that's what I did, right? So having that accountability partner was necessary. Now, so my goals, going back, I think we got sidetracked a little. So my goal at that point was 23 was, okay, I'm going to get into anesthesia school. I'm going to become CRNA, and I'm going to become an investor. My goal has always been to become an investor. I never really saw myself as a worker. I'll just be honest with you. And there's nothing wrong with that, being a worker, but I grew up understanding, and there's a story I'll share about when my mom got sick, and it kind of changed my perspective and on how I perceived working. And that was ultimately one of the driving forces that made me say, you know what, I'm going to become an investor and I'm going to work tirelessly. I'm going to work tirelessly to learn how to be one. Yes, I had good role models around me. My mom was a entry level, I would say, at that time, entry level entrepreneur. She was definitely making moves, but I didn't have any proficient or prolific investors around me. But I learned things from her and my dad that honestly till today have grounded me and have helped me become the investor that I am. So at that point, that was one of my big things. I said, okay, I'm going to learn to become a better real estate investor and just a general investor at that, right? Because once again, something that I also learned is if you think about it, right? Bear with me for a second. I'm going to try to, once again, this is off the dome, so the thoughts might be a little scrambled. We are living in this world, right? But our true potential is only as much as you think you can do and what you're willing to work for. So, yes, you might not be the greatest, you might not run the best staffing firm, but you might not be the best at it. But if you're top 20, you're still solid, right? So but if that was your best, as long as you did other things as well, you're still a better individual for doing it. And that's kind of the mentality I had. So I knew to become just a generalized investor and learning different things in different businesses, whether it be learning how to trade and learning how money truly worked and manipulating that to help you become better financially. These things were imperative. These things were things I wanted to know. I just didn't want to be a real estate investor. I just didn't want to be, a lender or something like that. At that point, I didn't even think about that. But these are all things that I thought were important to understand going forward. So those are my goals. Okay, become a generalized investor, learn more about becoming an investor, and getting into real estate. Because once again, real estate, I think, makes the most millionaires in the US, and it grounds you. There's a lot of benefits, tax savings and things like that. Things that we'll talk about in another video. But so that was my goal. Now, it was a little bit more spelt out but if you think about it, a lot of these things were just start becoming this, or even just start becoming an investor. Just like start studying about it, start learning about it. Excuse me. Not even becoming one, but just start learning about it. That was my goal. Just, hey, you'd be 5 years in, or 3-4 years into your career at this point, and then just learn. Well, what ended up happening was I'm now 5 years into my career. I've taken different paths. I've run different businesses as far as on the anesthesia side, which I never once thought I would do. I never once thought I would run my own firm. I had a partner, but nonetheless, I never thought I would do all these things. I never thought I'd run a staffing firm. I never thought of these things, but I did them, right? I did them. I purchased real estate, owned some rental properties, and became a full-fledged investor, right? While still doing my passion, which is, still anesthesia and becoming an investor. So looking back and just looking about, the things that have or the spoils that come with accomplishing your goals is like, it's mind blowing because I'm trying to make sure I don't go too long, right? Because at the end of the day, it was like, man, these were the goals that I set. And man, when you see the fruits of your labor, it definitely puts a different taste in your mouth, so to speak, as to like, wow, because sometimes you get caught up, right? And this is something I'll just throw in there. Actually, two things. One of the things that I also understood, I can't remember, I think I probably started figuring this out at the age of like 20, 21. I was, because I always see that, oh man, billionaires, why do they keep getting rich? I think, honestly, billionaires and guys that are really rich, multi-millionaires, whatever, the actual joy is in the journey. It's in the journey. The actual joy is in the journey. The joy is not from the spoils of the journey. And that was the one thing that I learned, and I'm glad I learned that because it's made me embrace the hardship, the hard times, the times where you failed, the times where you made a bad decision financially. Yes, as long as you can dig yourself out. I guess I should say that as a prefix, right? But as long as you can dig yourself out, the actual joy is in the journey. And if you think about it, that's why I think a lot of these guys continue to invest, even as they're becoming massive success. And you think these guys never have to work a day. It's because the journey is the actual fun part, not the spoils of it, right? Like, I mean, to me, I'm a car guy, but I look around and I don't even see Jeff Bezos driving the car. I mean, when I see him around, this guy's he can buy every single car twice over. He doesn't even own them, right? Or he does, but doesn't even drive them like that. So that to me tells me right then and there that the actual journey is what people are actually chasing. So now going back to what were the things that I did? Well, we already talked about having an accountability partner or accountability partners, setting short-term goals as well as long-term goals, but also becoming, we talked about being your own tough critic. But one of the best things that I learned because I'll say this, let me go back and say this. When I was younger, I was really good at being my own critic. I was exceptional at it. You can tell me, and this started up in like midway through my high school years, and there was a story behind that. Maybe I'll share it later on. And I remember being upset and saying, man, how could I let this situation get me this bogged down and this mentally not unstable, because I was just like emotional. Why did I let this? But because I wasn't my own, I didn't criticize myself hard enough. So what did I do? I developed this shell and I became my toughest critic. And it works really well. If you're really self-aware, you can become your tough critic. But I will say this, it can come at a very dangerous expense. Here's why. Because what I found is at some points, because you're so good at it, you can criticize yourself to know what you're bad at. You can end up hurting your emotions if you aren't willing to be solution oriented. So you have to, in order to become your toughest critic, you have to understand that the goal is to become solution oriented. You just can't be a critic with no solution. That makes no sense. But as I got older, I learned something else. You also have to be your own biggest fan. You have to believe in yourself more than anyone else can. And if you can combine the two of them, you will be a dangerous individual. And thankfully, I learned that probably mid or late 20s to, yeah, so I'd say like my late 20s, I start to pick that up and I start to employ that into my own life. I started to be my own big fan, understand like, hey man, that was, give yourself a high five, you know? So that was another thing. So another thing that I thought was very important for me, and like I said, I would share the story about the thing that happened early in my childhood that made me, you know, when one of my parents got sick, that really changed my life about understanding working and why, you know, that shouldn't be your goal. Was I understood that I had to control my own destiny. Now, I speak on this a lot. The ability to understand that you control your own destiny, and I'll summarize it this way, because I didn't want this video to be that long. I'll say this: when you understand, when you're, I say the age of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, right when you get to like 18, you are not in control of your destiny. I'll say this: when I meet young people that are early in age like that, unfortunately, those individuals are in the hands, their destiny is highly influenced by their surroundings and by the people, like their parents, the people who are authority figures above them. And at a young age, I figured, okay, once I turned 18, I wanted to control my own destiny. Now, of course, even in your early adult life, your 18, 19, 20, like your college years, you're still pretty dependent. In the West, it's a little easier because you can get student loans and you can kind of live off of that kind of stuff. But for me, you're still pretty dependent on the individual, the authorities that are in your life. And that was one of the biggest things that I felt, that once I got done with college, and I was, you know, probably my first year out, I was probably making like 90, 110K out. I know it sounds crazy, but I had a business, you know, I had a partner. My mom was one of my business partners, and I helped her run, what was it, a home health care. So I was definitely doing well, you know, a lot of free labor. It was not easy, just to be honest, but it taught me a lot about business and understanding things, you know, understanding organizational skills and things like that. So yeah, I've been thugging it since the early 20s, man. But I don't want to get too distracted. So it's understanding that you want to control your own destiny. And once you do, you shouldn't be willing to make excuses. I make no excuses. I despise people that make excuses. I'm not gonna lie. It's one of the hardest things, and to me, and we could talk about this in another video, is choosing business partners and making sure that they are individuals who do not make excuses. When I encounter people that make excuses, honestly, it makes me sick to my stomach because I despise excuses. You know, I think it's a cop out. It's a weak link. You know, it's like, you know, it shows me that you don't control your own destiny. Something else does, especially if you blame it on, you know, another race or something like that. That to me bothers me as well. But that's a whole other story. We won't even discuss that in this video. You have to be able to control your own destiny. So yeah. So, you know, when I looked back, and just to kind of summarize everything, when I look back in the last 10 years, I would say, yes, I have been successful in accomplishing my goals. But you know what it made me do? It made me sit down and pencil the next 10 years out. Because now I know that, hey, Buka, you definitely did not aim for the stars. You did well. Don't get me wrong. And I'm hoping I can watch this video 10 years from now and say, wow, that guy was pretty spot on. Yes, I did well in what I expected to do and what to become. But I think for the next 10 years, I've got even something better than what I've done in this last 10 years, previous 10 years. So guys, I want you guys to leave me a comment in the comment section telling me what were your goals 10 years ago, and have you accomplished those goals? And if not, There's no problem with that, right? You might have just had more lavish goals than I did. Better for you. Question is, are you still on track to accomplish those goals? And what is it going to take? Is it going to take more action from you? Is it going to take more action from just, or did you change your goals, right? I and then the next thing is, tell me, whether or not you choose to share it or not, some just comment next 10 years so that you can remember to set a goal for the next 10 years and say, okay, I'm here now. I'm 20, 21, 30, whatever. These are my goals for the next 10 years. And this is how I'm going to accomplish that. Also, in the comment section, tell me how you're going to accomplish that. Tell me things that you can do. Because guess what? One of the best things is we can learn from each other. I didn't create all these goals out of thin air. I saw individuals who were successful, whether it be through family members or individuals who I came across, and I asked questions and from books and things like that. And that was how I was able to set my goals, right? So it's been nice coming back on camera. I know it's been a while. That was one of my goals, to get back on camera. And here, I've accomplished that goal, so I can check that off the box. I hope to be back on more frequently. I don't hope, I actually will be back on more frequently. But till the meantime, peace.